The world and all that's in it has been torn to shreds. In the crackling rubble that rains from overcast skies like pebbles kicked over a rocky edge on a hike, our perception of Earth is taken, swiped in an instant, replaced only by a cold and colorless amalgamation of floating reminders that at some point, life as we know it had existed. Maybe that it could still exist, if not for that enormous floating thing drawing near into the ruins. There is no explanation for what this is. At least, none that anybody who sees it could ever hope to understand. This thing, this nightmarish mass which exudes only the essence of evil, the power of destruction, it just is. Our world has become an unsolved milk puzzle, one whose pieces have been scattered without rhyme or reason. In all of this, in the oppressive, overcast sky, stands alone a figure whose stature defies her inner fear as she stares into an abyss that has been staring back at her long before this moment in time. This is impossible. This can't be happening. The tears won't stop as poor Madoka Kaname begins to understand that no one person could ever stand up to something so powerful, so overbloated with ceaseless destructive energy. Madoka sees this moment of cosmic destruction, and with nothing else left in her power to do, begs for it to stop. That's when Madoka Kaname is offered a choice.
You have the power to change this destiny, all this tragedy, all this destruction. You can change it if you want. The power to do so lies within you.
Make a contract with me, the creature offers with hopeful innocence, with sinister, candid clarity, and to become a magical girl. Deconstruction. Ask anyone who's seen Puella Magi Madoka Magica to tell you what makes it so special, and without fail, you'll get the following single-sentence review. Madoka Magica is a deconstruction of the magical girl genre. Ask them what that means, however, and suddenly the confident responses of Madoka fans begin to tremble, rupture, and fall apart. I'm not going to pretend like I'm immune to that Achilles heel of anime reviewership, of course. I too have carelessly thrown around the word deconstruction with the same mindless delight of an ape who's just thrown his own feces into the $1,000 handbag of a particularly well-off bystander, completely unaware that I was part of a growing micro-problem within anime discourse. Completely unaware that every time I said the word deconstruction, I was ruining Madoka Magica just a little bit more. Now, let's not cast judgment here. We've all said it at one point or another, so none of us are any better than each other. We've all cursed on accident when stubbing our toe, we've all been a little irritable when we haven't eaten enough, and we've all said, at one point or another, that Madoka Magica is a deconstruction of the magical girl subgenre. None of us were the first to say it, and none of us will be the last. Hopefully because after today, we can all comfortably say something else about it that is far more original and unique to each of us, if slightly less academic or concise. Now that begs the question, though. Why do we need to? What's so wrong with anime fans identifying who among their ranks survived the desu-apocalypse of anime fan-shaming by using the tried-and-true deconstruction description of Madoka in place of a salutation in the university hallway on our way to class and seeing who responds with a Miiverse quote? I'm Octo, and today in my corner, we'll be delving into what exactly a deconstruction is, where it isn't, and how exactly the idea of genre deconstruction ended up in the same verbal cesspit as the correct use of the words literally, minion, and the state of Ohio. This is Octo's Quarter, and we're diving deep into Prologue Madoka Magica. But more than that, we're diving deep into what it means to deconstruct a genre. Welcome aboard. Madoka Kaname is a regular girl. She dreams of becoming something special, of doing what's right and being a hero for others to look up to. She comes from a stable home, in a stable family, and she's got a good group of friends who love and support her. Sure, there may be the occasional middle school drama or especially tricky test, but on the whole of it, Madoka Kaname is happy. Watch only the first episode of Prologue Madoka Magica, sans cold open, or even avec cold open, and you'll find that the show goes out of its way to make this clear, mostly by way of comedic familial conversation and light, gentle backgrounds which run parallel to the laid-back warmth of the music playing alongside their varied and unmistakably unique design. These are what we think of when we think Prologue Madoka Magica, Episode 1. Desiderium, post meridie, sine felix. Pronunciation be darned. Desiderium for its serene, relaxed interior sound, for the way it sounds like laying on the couch after the house has been cleaned but before anyone shows up for Thanksgiving dinner. Listen closely. You can practically hear the sun shining in through the windows as the curtains flow gently in the breeze. Post meridie for sounding exactly and unmistakably like the cobblestone path next to the babbling stream that Magica's cast innocently walks each day on their morning commute to what has got to be the most futuristic middle school I've ever seen. Holy crap! Finally, sine felix for the emptiness it conveys so beautifully and carefully, for the way it sets the stage for what the series co-creator and scriptwriter Gen Urobuchi once falsely promised would be a light and heartwarming series. The name for such a tune, sine felix, can loosely be translated from its original Latin to mean happy stage. The sound of an empty room, the warm, woody sound of the guitar strings, followed by the echoes of empty dust flying through the air. How fitting that the happy stage sounds empty. When we know that the scenes which shall on it play are not without, when definitively defined, just a freaking nightmare castle of suffering and at least a couple splash park water buckets of tears just to wash it all down. Madoka Magica, even on an auditory level, is completely different the second time around, as is, really, any good deconstruction of a genre. Of course, the most subtle of these is the bright and happy post meridie, or in the afternoon in English. No, I'm not going to explain that one. It's boring if I give you all the answers, especially if I do it here. And the least subtle, ergo the most direct, is Desiderium, the calm piano piece which accompanies the warmth of a clean and well-lived-in family home. When translated into English, we might say that Desiderium best describes the feeling we now, in our not-dead language of English, describe as desire. The obvious question being, of course, what desire is associated in the scenes it accompanies? Keep that title in mind next time you watch the show, by the way, and make note of every time you hear it. You'd be surprised how much it changes the viewing experience to know what the music is trying to tell you and when exactly it's trying to say it. I'm sorry, by the way, there's going to be a lot of Latin in this video, assuming you couldn't already tell. I wouldn't say I speak Latin, especially since it's a dead language by definition, but I have studied Latin, at least a little bit in the past, and that's going to be very useful here, because Madoka Magica is obsessed with hiding information in Latin and German, I guess, but I don't speak German, so I'll take points where I can get them, is what I'm saying. For more information about my past, of course, you can feel free to watch my Kyoto Animation review series, a suggestion I offer only because the upcoming second episode of that series is highly likely to contain further information on my journey with the Latin language, which will not be divulged here. That is hint number 1. The first 3 episodes, in fact, fall under that same farcical umbrella, that everything is normal. And Madoka Magica is a standout magical girl series which delivers its tropes like caviar at a thrice Michelin-approved restaurant is delivered by the hand of the world's finest waiters to the world's richest diners. You wouldn't be wrong to take one look at the art direction, say you've seen Sailor Moon, and move on to the next Netflix recommendation. Well, okay, you might be wrong, but the decision wouldn't surprise me. That's more what I meant. All of this magical girl fluff, the innocence of school life mixed with the hinted-at higher purpose, the animal companion, all of what we see in the first 3 episodes of Madoka Magica, even the darker aspects, like the fact that the witches are capable of convincing vulnerable people to place a sentence-ending period before the natural conclusion of their work, all of this isn't anything new to those who have been paying attention. The only standout here is one Homura Akemi, and even then, what at first sound like cryptic warnings, questioning her happiness, asking if she loves her family, are later revealed by Mami to be rooted in cat-like territorialism and insecurity because of the titular Madoka's titanic potential, should she make a contract. Mami is this girl here, by the way, for those of you who forgot or weren't paying attention in the first place when she was introduced, or who happened to be here early. Yes, her actual name is Mami Tomoe to be exact, and she mothers the new magical girl recruits, Madoka and Sayaka. So the name is probably intentionally similar to the English word mommy. And that's all we're going to say about that here. Be as immature about it as you like, just don't expect me to play along. So really, the joy in Madoka Magica's first 3 episodes comes down to incredible execution of classic magical girl tropes. Nothing deconstructive about it. But as I'm sure you already know, a deconstruction very rarely starts out like a deconstruction. At least, not in the way that would make it obvious what's really going on your first time through. One of my favorite examples of this principle is found in something totally unrelated to Madoka Magica, in a video game, simply titled Moon. Moon is an RPG for the Sony PlayStation 1, and as of now, thankfully also the Nintendo Switch and Steam, which begins in a way that might sound familiar to you if you've ever played one of these RPG things before. There's a massive lore dump at the very beginning, which I'm displaying in Japanese because I'd really rather not give you the chance to read it for yourself here. There's a king in need of aid from a no doubt handsome knight. There's this thing.
God, do you see this woman? Do you see her face? What is this creature?
Beyond this point, I'm going to be spoiling the first part of Moon. If you want to go into the game blind, now is the time to leave. Same goes for everything else in this video, really. Whatever I talk about here, you can assume from this point on that it's gonna get spoiled, so keep that in mind moving forward. Spoilers ahead, and copious ones at that. Basically, if you want to play ReZero and you want to know what it must have felt like for Subaru Natsuki in a world he didn't understand, Moon is for you. Now, that should be enough to get you at least interested in the game. Other than that, I'm going to spoil just enough to ruin the first experience, so skip to the next chapter if you'd rather not hear about Moon for now. As you play Moon for the first time, you'll notice that it looks a lot like an RPG Maker game, which is to say, very generic. Trust me, you'll forgive these visuals once you realize how engrossing the gameplay is. About an hour in, you'll explore the first major town in the game, collecting hidden armor from a drawer in some rando's house, talking to enamored folks who can't wait to be saved from evil, and just generally enjoying being the hero. There are some who oppose you, of course, a moving rock here, a monster there, but thanks to the power at your disposal, the armor and weaponry you have on hand, there's not much that will faze you at this point in the game. A few hours later, that's going to change. At 8 hours and 27 minutes into Moon, you'll find yourself in front of a home invaded by something ungodly. A creature called the Paragon blocks your way and threatens the life of an innocent girl. Obviously, he has to be dealt with. But the fight against the Paragon is one of the most infamously difficult in the entire game. The Paragon, you see, is a master of illusion. The only way I managed to beat him in the end was with a lucky combo of dodges and critical hits. The game only gets more intense from there, with bigger monsters and a dragon that looks, well, like this. As the game draws near unto its final moments, after hours of intense questing, and with you at the peak of what you can do,
Hey! Stop playing that game and go to bed.
Moon does something really interesting. In the anime community, you'll often hear about the 3-episode rule. Give it 3 episodes, and you'll know for sure if you're watching a show that you like or not. That rule exists because of Madoka Magica. Toward the end of episode 3, just as Madoka has decided to become a magical girl, Mami Tomoe breaks down in tears. For a while, she's been taking Madoka and Sayaka with her to battle witches, bringing them into the witches' labyrinths, the wretched hiding places invisible to most, to show them what life is really like for a magical girl after she saved their lives from a witch just a few days ago. She's not crying here because she's scared, or because she can't handle what's going to come next. Mami Tomoe is crying because, for the first time, there's someone to talk to about all this. When magical girls are born, that is, when they are chosen by Kyubey to become magical girls, they're allowed one wish that is sure to come true, no matter what. Madoka and Sayaka are free to wish for whatever they'd like, but Mami never had that luxury. Dying in the flaming wreckage of a car in the highway where her parents gasped their final breaths, Mami Tomoe saw the creature and begged it to help her, to give her a way to live. Kyubey obliged, and Mami has since been bound to the laws of a magical girl, a lonely magical girl, a girl who has no parents and no family, a girl who exists only so that other people can have that which she lost forever in the flames and twisted metal chunks of her former family's former car. As far as we know, Mami never cried for them. Now, in the moment where others have agreed to join her, others who had a choice and who want to do what's right, her tears won't stop. Suddenly, Mami's empty life isn't quite so empty anymore. And so, triumphantly, and with a renewed sense of joy and motivation, Mami is going to kill the witch, and the group will celebrate another incredible day. Not just free of the witch's curse, but now, together, free of loneliness as well. What happens next is going to tear the entire genre apart from the inside out. I don't know why exactly, but there's something about Debussy's Clair de Lune that always manages to make me feel something. I love classical music in general, but even so, there are some songs, like Clair de Lune for example, that have always been special to me. I can still remember when I realized this, but that's something to discuss in a Kyoto Animation review, not here. For now, just know that it's difficult to describe how important this one singular melody is to me, and that I used it intentionally where I needed to in the Nichijou video. The music I used in certain segments of that video was very important, actually. That was hint number 2. Even in something objectively terrible, like Psychic School Wars, Claire de Lune still manages to make me feel something. So, when I suddenly found myself in a quiet old house, in Granby's house, as a quiet, beautiful rendition of Claire de Lune played in the background, I'm sure you already know that I felt something in that moment that I can't quite explain. Like I was home, having returned to a place I'd never been to before. That feeling came at a time when, well, let's just say it was especially welcome. Suddenly, you find yourself in a strange kind of witch's labyrinth, surrounded by things that you thought you knew. But now, as you wonder, daunted and afraid of the slowly worsening feeling that no one can see you, that no one can hear you. If you've ever understood, if you've ever known, truly known, any of them, who am I? What happened to Mami Tomoe at the end of the 3rd episode of Madoka Magica? What's happening now? Why am I ghostly, see-through, transparent to all around me? Why, in an RPG full of characters, a game that looks so different now than it did for all those well-spent hours, why can't I talk to anyone? Why can't anyone see me? Then, all of a sudden, someone can. Granby can. Granby and her dog, Tao.
Ton Benjamin, c'est toujours ce... Toi, c'est toujours ce d'abord. Sur les tombées des bêtes.
They all thought
Les canards, voilà.
I was dead. But that's not really true. They aren't seeing clearly. After all, I'm right here. I'm here, aren't I? I'm speaking, I'm sharing my thoughts. I exist! Granby knows that. She lovingly, like all grandparents do, sits in her chair and is ready to hear all about it. She has the kind of wisdom that only living for a long time can truly provide. The kind of wisdom that I can only dream of having. She asks me to tell her all about it. The first person to acknowledge me, to know who I am, asks of me nothing but to talk to her, to tell her everything. Once I've tuckered myself out, I walk slowly over to my old bed, the bed that I was always allowed to sleep in when I visited my Granby's house, and I fall asleep. Clarity doesn't come when the first sign that I'm on the right track shows up definitively in my dreams. Clarity doesn't come when I put on what Granby tells me are my old clothes, when she asks me where I've been, when I can't answer her because, truthfully, I don't know where I've been. When an armored monster crashes through the walls of a house in the neighborhood, I realize in horror that I don't know where I am now, either. Now, though, at the very least, I am visible. That much at least, is clear. There's a bird in the town square. I like him. He calls me Bub and stuff. I get the feeling that he's not exactly my friend, that if I broke down and cried like I did when I talked to Granby earlier, that he wouldn't be there for me the way that she was. The way these people talk frightens me. I hear English in their doubtlessly gibberish words as I speak to them.
Having a stroke, endearing weakness to your what I don't happen property. I'm the reason they wrote.
I want to know these people, but I'm nonetheless afraid of them, as I walk with no direction in a place that feels familiar and different, all at the same time. Services require payment, but outside of the money Granby gave me for bread, I haven't any to spare. So I buy the bread and I walk around trying to get my bearings. I don't get them. I see a murder happen. I realize the knight is probably here to protect me from whatever that thing I just saw was. It's vaguely similar in design to the slime I saw earlier in... Where exactly did I see that slime again? It's sunset now, and I'm walking slower than I did before. I suppose it has been a long day. What was it that bird told me? That I needed something in order to keep going, that I needed... love, was it? What is this? What is love? The next thing I know, my face hits the grass. Nobody sees this happen. Nobody knows that I've just died for the second time, alone on the way back to the house of the only person who ever acknowledged me. Clarity is knowing that when Mami Tomoe was attacked, she didn't die. Clarity is knowing she died the moment she asked Kyubey for help. Clarity is knowing that her soul died not when she was attacked, not when she was violently mauled by a witch in the labyrinth, but when this happened. The horror of this isn't that Mami Tomoe was killed. It's knowing that until that moment, she was still alive to see it happen. 3 times I almost feel like I'm making progress. There's a beautiful girl at the flower shop. There are guards in the castle of the king. The king is willing to see me in the early afternoon. The baker makes bread. The baker makes bread at the bakery every morning. There's a guy who sells trinkets I probably need but can't afford. I have no idea where I am. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Something has to be wrong, right? How can I make a difference like this? I fall, and my face scrapes the floors of the castle. Each time I wake up, I hear Clair de Lune once more, and I know that I have to try. I have to try my best to understand the world I've ended up in. You already know about what happens in Puella Magi Madoka Magica. You know that it's a so-called deconstruction now, thanks to those words being echoed in all corners of the anime fandom. We all know Madoka Magica tears its source genre limb from limb. We don't question why witches exist, why magical girls exist, or why Kyubey is there the first time through Madoka Magica, because we think we already know what we're getting into. The moment Mami Tomoe is taken by the witch, everything about Madoka Magica changes. Not just because it's a sudden and unexpected death, either. Because up until episode 3, Madoka Magica has simply been constructing. Putting together a happy, light-hearted magical girl anime series. After this moment, Madoka Magica immediately and permanently shifts gears. From this point on, Puella Magi Madoka Magica has officially become a deconstruction. Everyone describes Puella Magi Madoka Magica the same way. Puella Magi Madoka Magica, they say, is a deconstruction of the magical girl subgenre. The problem with that statement isn't that it's wrong. As we've discussed up until now, it really isn't. Madoka Magica takes the pieces of a magical girl show, the powers, the villains, the oddly specific age group, and gender exclusivity typical of the magical girl genre, the pieces its typical audience never questions, and it gives them answers. It gives us answers to the questions we didn't know that we had. Like Bakemonogatari, Moon, or Spec Ops The Line, Puella Magi Madoka Magica asks its audience to think about why things are happening this way. And what, in our real world where nothing is ever as simple as make a wish and help other people, would lead to any of this happening in the first place. Sakura eats a lot, because that's what an anime protagonist does. But actually, she eats a lot because she knows what it's like to go hungry, to be alone. She threatens Sayaka Miki and questions her, pushes her buttons, tells her to be selfish because that's what a rival does in anime. But actually, because she knows all too well what Sayaka is going through and wants to save her before it's too late. When she tells her to make the man she loves reliant on her by force, tells her what she could do to make sure what she actually wanted comes to pass, it sounds incredibly harsh and painful.
You could bust in there right now and break his arms and legs so bad he'll never be able to use them again. Make him so helpless he won't be able to do anything without you.
But she's not being evil in this scene. She's just rightfully accusing Sayaka Miki of having ulterior motives when she healed him. She never really wanted him out of the hospital, because now she's got no reason to go and see him. Now, she has to be brave and face her feelings, which is something Sayaka Miki was never strong enough to do, even when faced with definitive opposition.
That gives you one day to decide. Will you confess your true feelings to him or won't you?
Sayaka Miki could not resolve herself to speak up for herself, which is what her true wish was all along, and why her story feels so tragic. In any other magical girl show, this gesture might have worked, and Sayaka might have got what she wanted, but Madoka Magica deconstructs this concept by pointing out the dangers of assuming you know what's best for someone else, of deciding that it's your right to accomplish their goals for them. In the end, what Sayaka did was wrong. And it wasn't so black and white as she'd like us to believe it was, either. Sakura's comparison sounds much worse at first. But the more you think about it, the more you realize that healing him and expecting his love in return is just as bad as the alternative. It is emotionally manipulative. Over and over again, we are told that Sayaka should not make the wish that she makes, that she should be sure she knows exactly why she's doing it, that she should get to the heart of her wish. Madoka Magica argues that Sayaka's actions are unhealthy, that unless she's sure of herself and what she really wants to gain from this, that she will regret it. When she foolishly wishes for Kyosuke's hand to heal anyway, and later bears witness to the world's darker truths, truths that question her simplified binary beliefs, she doesn't have the foundation to protect herself against the breakdown that follows. She doesn't believe in herself enough to ignore the men on the train, and as a result, her ideals quickly crumble, and Sayaka Miki transforms into a witch. By asking where witches come from, why they need to be fought, and why Kyubey would grant a wish in exchange for doing so, Puella Magi Madoka Magica is flipping genre conventions, things about magical girl shows the audience simply accepts as part of the show before even beginning one, on their heads. Each reveal hits twice as hard, when in hindsight we wonder why we didn't question why all of this was happening in the first place. How things could possibly be this bad and why they ever had to get that way to begin with. Puella Magi Madoka Magica is the definition of a deconstruction, and everybody knows it. That's exactly why today we shouldn't call Madoka Magica a deconstruction. We shouldn't give away the surprises of a series that, from the very beginning, tried so hard to hide its true nature, to surprise us, that it tried to hide its main staff, and forced one of its main staff to lie to its audience in order to keep the secret safe. What right do we have to now reveal its secrets to those who have not yet seen it? What right do we have to give them reason to question everything before they even go in? Because if you question everything, if you know to question things before you even go into the show, you will never understand why Madoka Magica is special. If we hadn't told people to go in blind to Doki Doki Literature Club, and it had instead immediately called it a deconstruction of the dating sim, what surprises would it have held for any of us? If we hadn't told people to go into Undertale blind and try not to kill anything, what exactly would they have had to gain from that experience? How would they have been surprised by a deconstruction they knew was coming? And how would that have affected both of those games' existence in modern pop culture? Every time we use the word deconstruction, we rob Puella Magi Madoka Magica of what makes it so special. This is a graph showcasing the history of the words deconstruction and anime used together and searched over time. Wow! Look at that spike. When we account for localization taking longer back then than it does today, you'll notice that this graph perfectly lines up with the moment Madoka Magica began to enter the public conscious in the West. Yes, this show did come out in 2011, but the Blu-rays containing the now iconic English dub were released in early 2012, almost exactly when the spike on the graph begins to appear. Trying to determine who it was that first called the series a deconstruction of the magical girl genre is a long and difficult process, but whoever it was, the results of that rapidly spreading terminology would come to deconstruct the very idea of both Madoka Magica and the term deconstruction. Madoka Magica is not a deconstruction because it introduces dark twists. Magical Girl Sight or Magical Girl Raising Project, for example, would not fall under the same umbrella of deconstruction. Those are just pseudo-dark magical girl shows. Madoka Magica is a deconstruction because it takes apart and analyzes what makes a magical girl show a magical girl show. It also just happens to have dark and grim elements and uses them to explore the genre even further. Like I said before you can understand what a deconstruction is, you must first understand exactly what it isn't. Mami Tomoe's death is not deconstructive. It's horrific, scary, and it changes how we look at the world of the show, but it isn't deconstructive. The ending song changing after this happens to be more grim and unsettling, culminating with the image of Madoka as a witch opening her eye and looking directly at us after showing her walk directly past all those tragic stories she would eventually rewrite, is not deconstructive. It's cool, I like it, but it's not deconstructive. The soul gems containing someone's actual soul, however, accounting for why regular humans can suddenly take serious hits and get back up, the removal of the soul from the body to make them better fighters, that is deconstructive. It takes a genre-specific plot hole, typical of shows of this type, and breaks it down and analyzes it. It asks us to question something we've never questioned before, the laws of the universe. Cube being short for incubator, the cute animal curating and controlling all of this for his own purposes, for the purposes of entropy, for the sake of the universe. That is deconstructive.
If you ever feel like dying for the sake of the universe, call me. I'll be waiting.
It asks us to question the way this world works, and it makes us rethink the way we look at stories like this moving forward. That's what makes Madoka Magica a deconstruction, and not just a dark take on a magical girl show. Now that said, that doesn't make it perfect. I don't necessarily think the explanation for why it's always teenage girls was satisfactory or correct, but it's also proven that Kyubei's kind isn't always correct or all-knowing, so in a way, Madoka Magica calls him out on that by the end by proving that the incubator's method wasn't exactly the correct one. It does, however, also show us that abandoning that way of life leads to a much less advanced world, as the previously mentioned cityscape in the series finale concludes. So it could go either way, really. There were better ways of collecting energy, and those ways are, as we see, eventually implemented. We just bore witness to one particular method which was very flawed for the sake of genre deconstruction, which doesn't really bother me all that much in the grand scheme of things, but I still wish it could have been handled slightly differently so as to not really come off as sexist.
That's correct.
Which is ultimately about the same as the Wonder Egg priority situation when you get right down to it.
That's correct.
Also, just as a note here, I haven't seen Rebellion, and I'm not talking about anything else that got introduced to the series after the movies came out. In terms of Madoka Magica as a standalone series without the benefit of post-mortem content like the movies or Magia Record, this is how the show deconstructs the magical girl genre on its own. That's what it really means to be a deconstruction. Take elements standard of the genre and break them apart. It doesn't have to be dark in order to do that. Madoka Magica just happens to be both dark and deconstructive, as does the line. Moon, on the other hand, isn't quite so horrific, but it is equally deconstructive. I wake up in a house that feels familiar, and I hear Claire de Lune play once more. I realize I've been given another shot. I talk to Granby, and she gives me a bag of cookies. I like Granby. Granby is nice to me. She asks me to buy her some bread from the bakery. I decide to go there first. I see the corpse of a slime on the ground. My head hurts as I try to remember why it's there. I meet a bird in the town square. His name is Yoshida.
Hey man, hey, you know what the most important thing in the world is? It's love, my friend. Buddy, if you ain't got love, you'll stop breathing and pass the heck out. For real, man. It's game over, like, for your life. So keep that in mind. See you later, buddy.
I wonder again what love is, and to give myself time to think it over, I pause the game. There are hearts there. I bet this is what Yoshida was talking about before. As I make my way to the bakery, I'm surprised by how many people almost recognize me. They look at me. They probably smile. Then again, maybe they don't. I see the armored monster run around a bit. He frightens me. I fear his unpredictable nature. The woman at the bar is asleep. The woman at the flower shop is named Flora. She's beautiful. The trash hobo guy sounds kind of like Danny DeVito when he talks.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
I check my inventory. I find the bag of cookies. When I eat it, the heart gets a little brighter. Suddenly, I realize that I can use this to stay alive. Yoshida told me I could find love all over just by walking around. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, since I've yet to find any for myself. I guess I'll just keep walking and figure it out as I go. The baker's shop is open when I arrive, and after a quick knock, he tells me to come in. I buy bread for my Granby, and I pray I can make it back to her house alive. The town is amazing. It's full of people and life. Everyone here has a schedule, a system that they follow to a T. I'm walking slower now. Maybe I should have saved those cookies for when I needed them. Maybe I can still make it back in time to give her the bread. Maybe. I fall to the ground, and everything goes dark. This happens at least 3 more times before I finally start to put together what it is that I should be doing. Cookies restore some love. I need love in order to stay alive. Without it, it's game over. Like, for my life. Croissants also restore some love.
Are you going to finish that croissant?
Yes.
I can sleep anytime I want at Granby's house for as long as I want. Each new day, Granby gives me a new bag of freshly baked cookies. I sleep for 4 straight days to ensure I have enough cookies for what comes next. I buy the bread immediately, and then I wonder if there's enough yenum left over to buy a croissant roll to keep myself alive. There is. I go straight home to Granby's house with a pastry shop's worth of baked goods stuffed directly into my pockets. When I give Granby the bread, I feel like I'm making progress. I never make it very far into town past this. I eventually meet the king, and he gives me a card, a business card. He says I can use the card to get other cards, as exchanging business information is how the people of this world interact with each other, how they introduce themselves. No wonder they all seemed so afraid of me earlier. I meet a little man made out of toys. His name is Noge. He says he is studying abroad. He asks me what my favorite toy is, and I tell him it's my precious game station. He asks if he can borrow it someday. I say he can, and in exchange, he lends me his favorite toy. I cherish the gesture, and soon afterwards, I collapse again into the ground. When I wake up, Noge and I have never met. Playing Moon this way, I learned so much about the world that never cared about me. I met and interacted with characters, experienced, in some cases, entire adventures with people, formed relationships, and progressed. But I could never make it back to the house before my action limit. The love I had to spare gave out, and everything I did was suddenly erased. I've had dreams about this kind of experience. I have very vivid dreams. Often full worlds and lifetimes will go by in the span of 8 hours. I always know that I am an outsider to these dreamy landscapes I visit in my sleep, in my incredibly lucid dreams. I know because I remember my dreams more than most, at least as far as I know. Many of these experiences are very special to me. As a result, I won't be sharing them here, but some of them scare me, because I know I've already forgotten them. The idea that you could live an entire life, that you could have at any point gone on a lifetime's worth of adventures only to wake up and be normal again and never think about the people you met or the incredible things you saw ever again. That I myself have forgotten my own life. That kind of experience can be crippling. In Adventure Time, there's this episode where Finn and Jake build a pillow fort. Finn gets lost in the pillows and eventually happens upon a pillow universe, a world and kingdom where he becomes a crucial role, where he has a family, children, a legacy. At the end of his life there, he finds a way out and resumes his life with Jake as if nothing happened. He soon forgets anything ever did, and the Pillow Land is never mentioned again in the entire series. That is the feeling of being a side character in someone else's time loop. Time loops are hell. Living the same events and being unable to grow or learn from any of them. Being bound by the laws of an endlessly repeating cycle. Being unable to ever move forward. That is precisely why we care so deeply for the plight of Miss Homura Akemi, the girl who wished to turn back time to save her only friend, Madoka Kaname, who again and again lived the same month in anticipation of a way to defeat the most vile witch who would ever live, the great and terrible Walpurgisnacht. In failure after failure, Homura Akemi tries everything to save her, to do something different, until eventually she is so consumed by the terror she has beheld that she decides to stop trying to save her as her friend, and start trying to save her as a stoic, angry, powerful, magical girl. A girl willing to use force to keep everyone around her safe from the dark reality of life as a Maho Shoujo. Inadvertently, in so doing, Homura Akemi only makes Madoka Kaname's potential more potent, with so many timelines, so many worlds, all converging on her. Madoka has the power no other girl has ever had before. Madoka Kaname has the power to violate karmic destiny and become a god. In the end, when the world in rubble falls, its last life choked out by Walpurgisnacht, it is Madoka Kaname who makes the contract and, bringing things full circle, saves Homura Akemi from a witch with her magical powers, just like she did all those loops ago. One day, at the end of everything, Homura Akemi will again face darkness. But she'll do it knowing that she's not alone. The memory of Madoka Kaname disappears from the world. Her entire life becomes nothing to anyone she knew. In the inverse of forgetting an entire life's worth of experiences, Madoka Kaname's life is forgotten by all who used to know her, her family, her friends, everyone, except for Homura Akemi. And life goes on. I wake up again to Claire de Lune in my Granby's house. And that's when I realized that Moon has a player's manual. A manual most who experienced the game, myself included, recommend you read before you spend 14 in-game days trying and failing to survive your first 24 hours in Moon's world. Turns out, this red dash here tells me exactly when I'm going to collapse. Something that can be prevented by eating snacks every so often, just as I'd discovered on my own. The line in the clock is what time it is currently, but the dash tells me the exact moment that I will stop moving forever. At least forever until I wake back up to Claire de Lune in my Granby's house after falling unceremoniously to the ground. It taught me a lot more about the game too, information which I used to explore this incredible world and find therein fulfillment in some of the most incredible stories I've ever experienced in any game. Eventually, thanks to that manual, I did progress. And I did save. On my own, now knowing enough about the worlds to get by within it, and knowing enough about its people to write autobiographies about each of them with encyclopedic detail and accuracy, I explored the world by its own rules. I learned that the shop sells different merchandise at night. The baker, who drinks every Echo Day night, splurging his yenim on alcohol to the point that the bartender, Miss Wanda, tells him that even his bread sometimes tastes just a little like the brandy he downs at her bar, holds a secret that changed completely how I saw what I had initially believed was just another baker in just another RPG, whose head was shaped like a loaf of freshly baked bread because that's adorable. After observing him, after seeing every action of every person in this town for literal weeks, I knew exactly what to do with my time on Echo Day night next. I followed him after he left Wanda's bar in the wee hours of the morning, a time so early that the sky is still black as though it were night. Baker stumbled back to his humble home and workplace, and Baker, in his drunken state, forgot to lock his door. I walked in after him. While as a hero in an RPG I could go anywhere at any time, now as a little clump of clothes with no power, with nothing I could use to force my way into places I want to see, I had to resort to taking advantage of a drunken man, a poor baker, because he wouldn't let me just waltz on into the back of his shop like I owned the place. Because I don't own the place. I found him collapsed in the back. I expected him to be angry with me, but he seemed happy to see me. And then as he stood there, As I waited, Baker told me everything.
Satisfy you? Thank correct. Still your most endearing week. I'm the reason they were having royal what don't happen. Property of the Greek element. I'm the reason having a stove. Tank minus tank corrected. Endearing weakness, royal. I see the velocity. Tank corrected. Still you. Royal what I don't. Property of the Greek mentality. Property of the Greek mentality. I'm the reason the property of royal what don't happen. Stop. Satisfy you? Tank minus. Satisfy you? Tank minus tank. Having a stroke.
For once, it wouldn't matter if I died before getting home. Baker wouldn't remember me anyway. Baker, too, knows what it's like to be trapped like Homura Akemi in an endless time loop. Later, I met a man named Doolittle. He asked me how watching the monster destroy the helpless slime made me feel. I was honest with him. Honest like I was when I cried and told Granby everything. And what happened next melted my heart. He told me that there was a way to help. I won't spoil Moon for you. In fact, I won't say another word about its pacing or its characters or its world. Moon is a deconstruction. One just as powerful and engaging as Puella Magi Madoka Magica, and one with a heart of gold. It's not very well known, so there aren't many resources out there to help you if you get lost during your playthrough, but I think that's what makes the game feel so special. You'll struggle, and you'll fail at first, yes, but eventually, Moon will teach you what it means to deconstruct a genre. Outside of that, you probably won't hear me speak of Moon ever again. I will not discuss it further. I will not ruin this once-in-a-lifetime experience for you. If you want to know what happens next, well, here's where you can find it. Enjoy. And know that I am not going to tolerate any spoilers about this game in the comments of this video if you do play it. The game's too important for that. As our time together draws to yet another close, longer for some than for others, I find myself asking, why do we love deconstructions? Is it because they show us tormented characters, fates worse than death, hell beyond what we could possibly imagine? Or is it simply because we enjoy good world building? Because we crave deeper dives into aspects of our favorite genres and stories that we could never have done on our own? Is it just because we enjoy the crippling terror we feel when thrust into the darkness of Spec Ops The Line or Madoka Magica? Well, while I can't answer that for you, I have found an answer for myself that I at least find satisfactory. One that I feel helps me understand the genre, as well as myself, a little better. We love deconstructions because deconstructions help us understand our mistakes and encourage us to put forth the effort necessary to correct them. That was hint number 3. Here at the end, I humbly recommend to you all of the media I've in detail discussed today, and I hope that you enjoy exploring their thought-provoking chasms for yourself along the way. It is unlikely that you'll hear from me again for a while, for my next project is already underway and is, as you'd expect, quite large and very involved. For now, however, I shall leave you all with a question. If a strange animal approached you and asked you in a time of great personal distress to make with it a contract to fight against evil and experience the magic you never knew existed, knowing all the while that if you said yes, your entire existence could very well be torn to shreds as the world and all that's in it collapsed around you. If you knew what was going to happen to you in the end, what would you wish for?
No matter what happens next, don't be too hard on yourself. Even now, for all you've done, you can still go home. Lucky you.
What now, sir?
Huh?
The men are asking. What do we do now?
We complete our mission.
And what mission would that be, sir?
Just get me a goddamn radio. This is Captain Martin Walker, requesting immediate evacuation of Dubai. Survivors. One too many.